My name is Violet, and at 27, I never imagined I'd be homeless on Thanksgiving night. Growing up in Massachusetts, I worked hard to become a successful software engineer in Boston. My parents' financial demands increased with my success, but when I refused to fund their $15,000 Caribbean vacation, they kicked me out during our holiday dinner. My brother Jackson watched silently, not knowing his gambling problem would soon bring them to my doorstep, begging for help. Family should be about love, not money. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and join me as I share how standing my ground changed everything. I grew up in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Salem, Massachusetts. Our two-bedroom house wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable enough for our family of four. My parents, Diana and Thomas, weren't wealthy, but we never went without necessities. In the early years, they both worked hard. Mom was an administrative assistant at a local insurance company, and Dad worked as a mechanic at a car dealership. They weren't extravagant people back then, focusing instead on providing a stable home. As I entered middle school, something began to shift in our family dynamic. Mom started becoming increasingly concerned with appearances and social status. She'd come home talking about her coworker's new car or the expensive vacation her boss took. Dad never challenged her growing materialism. Instead, he quietly enabled it, working overtime to fund her new shopping habits and social climbing attempts. My brother Jackson, 2 years younger than me, absorbed these changing values like a sponge. While I buried myself in books and coding projects, Jackson focused on fitting in with the popular crowd. He wanted the right clothes, the latest gaming systems, and anything else that would impress his friends. Our parents indulged him, seeing his social success as a reflection of their parenting. "Jackson's just being a normal kid," Mom would say whenever I questioned why he got a new phone while I saved babysitting money for months to buy a basic laptop for programming. While Jackson received everything he wanted, I developed a different relationship with money. At 16, I started working weekends at a local coffee shop, saving every dollar possible for college. My parents had made it clear that education costs would be shared between us. I now realize that meant I would be paying most of it myself. "College is your investment in your future, Violet," Dad would say. "You'll appreciate it more if you have some skin in the game." I didn't mind working hard, but the contrast between how they treated Jackson and me became increasingly obvious. He received an allowance until he was 18 while I worked through high school. When he wanted to go to basketball camp, they paid without question. When I needed money for a coding competition, I was told to use my savings. The first time they directly asked me for money was during my sophomore year of college. I was studying computer science at a state university, working part-time at the campus IT department and taking a full course load. "Violet, we have a bit of a situation," Mom said during our weekly phone call. "The furnace broke down and we need to replace it. It's $4,000 we don't have right now. Could you help us out?" It seemed like a genuine emergency, so I transferred $3,000 from my carefully accumulated savings. It was almost everything I had. A month later, Mom posted photos on social media of their weekend getaway to a luxury hotel in Newport. When I called to ask about it, she dismissed my concerns. "Oh, we got a great last-minute deal after your father received his bonus. Don't worry, we're still replacing the furnace with your money." That pattern continued throughout college. Their emergencies became more frequent as my earnings increased. By the time I graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious tech firm in Boston, I had given them over $12,000 for various crises that in retrospect seemed suspiciously timed with vacations, renovations, or Jackson's growing wish list. My starting salary was substantial, especially for a recent graduate. I found a small but nice apartment in Cambridge and began establishing myself as a professional. I should have been enjoying my financial independence, but instead, I became my family's unofficial bank. The requests became bolder after graduation. No longer framed as emergencies, they were now presented as my filial duty. "We sacrificed everything for you, Violet," Mom would say. "Now that you're successful, it's time for you to give back to the family." I tried setting boundaries, suggesting I could contribute to specific needs rather than giving them cash, but my attempts were met with emotional manipulation. "I guess we failed as parents if you don't even care enough to help your own family." Dad would sigh, making me feel terrible for even questioning their requests. By the end of my first year working, I had given them over $20,000. Meanwhile, Jackson had dropped out of community college and was living at home working sporadically at retail jobs, but spending most of his time gaming and going out with friends. I later learned he had developed a gambling habit, starting with sports betting and progressing to online poker. I continued giving them money, even as resentment built inside me. Each time I transferred funds, a little voice inside questioned why I was funding their lifestyle while limiting my own. But the guilt they instilled was powerful, and breaking free from it would take something dramatic. 3 years into my career, I received a significant promotion that came with a 30% salary increase. Excited about this professional milestone, I posted about it on LinkedIn, never imagining how my parents would react to this news. The call started the very next day. "Congratulations, sweetheart," Mom gushed. "We are so proud of you. Listen, since you got this wonderful promotion, we were thinking you could help us replace our deck. The wood is rotting and it's becoming dangerous." The estimate she sent was for $12,000 for what appeared to be not just a repair, but a complete luxury upgrade with built-in hot tub and outdoor kitchen. I agreed to contribute $4,000 toward basic repairs, which led to a tense conversation about my stinginess despite my tech money. 2 weeks later, Dad called about replacing their 10-year-old car with a brand new luxury SUV. The following month, Mom needed dental work that insurance wouldn't cover, but somehow included cosmetic veneers. The requests came so frequently that I began dreading seeing their names on my caller ID. What bothered me most wasn't just the money, but how these emergencies always seemed to coincide with social media posts showing them enjoying expensive restaurants, or Mom showing off designer purchases. Once, after I sent money for urgent plumbing repairs, Mom posted photos of her new Louis Vuitton handbag, describing it as a little treat to myself. Then came the incident with Jackson's gambling. He had lost $8,000 betting on college football and was receiving threatening messages from his bookie. Dad called me in panic, saying Jackson was in danger. "These aren't nice people, Violet. They know where we live. We need to pay this off immediately." I transferred the money that same day, terrified for my brother's safety. I also insisted on talking to Jackson directly about getting help for his gambling problem. "It's not really an addiction," he dismissed during our call. "I just had a bad streak. But thanks for bailing me out, sis. I owe you one." He never mentioned it again, and neither did my parents. No repayment plan was discussed, no addiction counseling was sought. The incident was treated as resolved the moment my money cleared their account. It was around this time that I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Lawson, to address my growing anxiety about money and family obligations. During one session, she asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Violet, do you feel your parents would still love you if you stopped giving them money?" I couldn't answer immediately, which was revealing in itself. "I think it's time we discuss setting healthier financial boundaries with your family," she suggested gently. My first attempt at boundary setting was small. Mom called, asking for $300 for a spa day with her friends, framing it as needed stress relief for her health. For the first time, I simply said, "No, I can't do that right now." The response was immediate and overwhelming. She cried. She accused me of abandoning the family now that I was rich and successful. Dad called an hour later, saying I had given Mom anxiety attacks with my selfishness. Jackson texted that I was being stuck up and had forgotten where I came from. For 3 days, I received constant messages making me feel like the worst daughter in the world. I almost gave in, my finger hovering over the transfer button in my banking app. But something had shifted inside me. The manipulation was so obvious now that Dr. Lawson had helped me recognize the pattern. Instead of sending money, I sent links to articles about financial independence and healthy family boundaries. Mom didn't speak to me for 2 weeks afterward, then resumed contact as if nothing had happened with a new request for helping them join an exclusive golf club where her boss was a member. The cycle continued, my resolve wavering between firm boundaries and guilty capitulation. Each time I gave in, the requests grew larger and the expectations higher. I was trapped in a pattern of financial exploitation masked as family obligation, and I couldn't see a way out without completely severing ties with the people who raised me. What I didn't realize was that Thanksgiving would force the issue in a way I never could have anticipated. In early November, my parents invited me for Thanksgiving dinner. I was looking forward to a normal family holiday, despite our ongoing financial tensions. That changed when Mom called with exciting news a week before the holiday. Your father and I have decided to book that Caribbean cruise we've been dreaming about. 14 days, 5 islands, and a suite with a balcony. We'll leave right after New Year's to escape the winter. I congratulated her, genuinely happy they were pursuing something they'd wanted. Then came the bombshell. So we'll need you to transfer $15,000 by next Monday. That covers the cruise, some new clothes, and spending money for excursions. My stomach dropped. Mom, that's a lot of money. Why would I be paying for your vacation? Because you're our successful daughter. We gave you everything, and now it's your turn to give back. Jackson certainly can't afford it, and we deserve this after all our hard work. I was speechless. This wasn't an emergency or even a necessity. This was a luxury vacation that cost nearly a quarter of my annual take-home pay. After our call ended, I immediately phoned my best friend Amara. They've completely lost touch with reality, Amara said after I explained the situation. You need to stand your ground this time, Vi. This is beyond unreasonable. I spent the next several days mentally preparing for the difficult conversation. I decided Thanksgiving dinner would be the moment to clearly establish my financial boundaries once and for all. I wouldn't be confrontational, just firm and clear. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright. I drove to my parents' house with a knot in my stomach and a trunk full of contributions. An expensive bottle of wine, homemade cranberry sauce, and 2 pies I'd stayed up late baking. I was determined to be a generous daughter, in ways that didn't involve writing blank checks. Mom greeted me with a hug that felt perfunctory. You're just in time. Jackson's already here and the turkey's almost done. The house smelled wonderful, a blend of roasting turkey sage stuffing and sweet potatoes with brown sugar. For a moment, I felt a wave of nostalgia for simpler times, before money had complicated our relationship. Dad was watching football in the living room, barely looking up when I entered. Hey, kiddo, did you bring the wine? Jackson was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He nodded in my direction without making eye contact. Sup, sis? The tension was already palpable, or perhaps I was just anticipating it. Either way, I tried to maintain a positive attitude as I helped Mom finish preparing dinner. She spent most of the time talking about the cruise. We'll visit Barbados, St. Lucia, Antigua, St. Martin, and the Bahamas, she gushed while arranging dinner rolls. I bought the most gorgeous sundresses. Want to see? Without waiting for my response, she pulled out her phone and showed me photos of expensive resort wear, all with designer labels still attached. These were a bit of a splurge, but we need to look our best on the ship. I nodded politely, wondering if she had purchased these with the assumption that I would be funding the trip. The thought made my stomach tighten further. When we finally sat down to dinner, Mom continued describing their cruise plans in elaborate detail, from the gourmet dining options to the couples massage they planned to book. Dad added occasional comments about the golf courses he intended to play at various ports. The deposit was due last week, Mom mentioned casually as she passed the mashed potatoes. We put it on our credit card since we knew you'd be transferring the money soon. This was my moment. Taking a deep breath, I set down my fork. Actually, I need to talk to you both about that. I'm not going to be able to pay for your cruise. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's smile froze, then slowly dissolved into a look of confusion. What do you mean you're not paying? We already booked it. I'm sorry, but $15,000 is too much. I can't afford to fund a luxury vacation right now. Mom's face flushed deep red. Can't afford it. You make 6 figures. You just got a huge promotion. I have my own expenses and financial goals, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm happy to contribute to family gatherings or help in real emergencies, but I can't pay for luxury cruises. Dad set down his wine glass with more force than necessary. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by embarrassing us in front of the cruise company when our payment bounces. You shouldn't have booked something you couldn't afford. I said, my resolve strengthening despite my racing heart. We raised you, Mom nearly shouted. We clothed you, fed you, put a roof over your head. Now you're successful because of our sacrifices, and you won't even help us enjoy our retirement. You're not even retired, I pointed out, and I've already given you over $40,000 in the past few years. Jackson snorted from across the table. Classic Violet, always counting every penny. Mom pushed back from the table, tears welling in her eyes. I cannot believe my own daughter would be so selfish. What will I tell my friends that my successful daughter refused to help her parents have one nice vacation? This isn't about helping, I said, my voice breaking slightly. It's about expectations. I'm not your personal ATM. Dad's face had turned cold and distant. If that's how you feel about family obligations, maybe you don't belong at this table. What? I whispered, not believing what I was hearing. You heard him, Mom said, wiping angry tears. If you're too selfish to help your family, then maybe you should leave. You're kicking me out on Thanksgiving. I looked around the table in disbelief. Jackson was staring at his plate, uncomfortable but silent. Dad was glaring at me with disappointment. Mom was openly crying now, but her eyes held anger, not sadness. Until you reconsider your priorities and your responsibilities to this family, yes, Dad said firmly. We've clearly failed as parents if we raise such a selfish daughter. I sat frozen for a moment, tears burning behind my eyes. Then mechanically I folded my napkin and placed it beside my barely touched plate. If valuing myself means I'm selfish, then I guess I am, I said quietly, standing up. But that doesn't make it right for you to treat me like an open wallet instead of a daughter. Just go, Mom said, not looking at me. Call us when you're ready to apologize and help your family. In a daze, I collected my coat and purse. No one moved to stop me. No one said goodbye. As I walked to my car in the cold November evening, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. My own parents had kicked me out on Thanksgiving because I refused to fund their luxury vacation. I started my car with shaking hands, tears finally spilling down my face as I pulled away from the house where I grew up, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. I drove through blurred vision to Amara's apartment across town. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as the reality of what had just happened washed over me in waves. My own parents had kicked me out on a holiday because I wouldn't give them $15,000 for a Caribbean cruise. The absurdity of it might have been laughable if it weren't so deeply painful. Amara opened her door, took one look at my tear-stained face, and pulled me into a tight hug. Oh God, Vi, what happened? I collapsed onto her couch and told her everything between sobs. The vacation demand, the confrontation, my parents' reaction, and the ultimate rejection. Amara listened without interrupting her expression, shifting from shock to outrage. They kicked you out on Thanksgiving over a cruise? She shook her head in disbelief. That's not normal, Vi. That's not what loving parents do. That night, curled up on Amara's guest bed, I faced a devastating truth. My relationship with my parents had never been about love and connection. To them, I was valuable, primarily as a financial resource. The realization was both heartbreaking and strangely liberating. The week that followed was one of the darkest of my life. I called in sick to work for 2 days, unable to focus or function normally. I questioned everything about myself and my family relationships. Had I truly been selfish? Was I a bad daughter for refusing their request? The lifetime of conditioning made it difficult to trust my own judgment. Amara checked on me constantly, bringing me food when I couldn't motivate myself to cook, sitting with me during crying jags, and reassuring me that I wasn't the villain in this story. Your parents are supposed to want what's best for you, she said firmly, not drain your bank account for their luxuries. And I reached out to Dr. Lawson for an emergency therapy session, where I poured out the whole sordid tale. What you're experiencing is the painful result of setting a necessary boundary, she explained. Your parents are responding with emotional manipulation because they've become accustomed to controlling you through guilt and obligation. But they're my family, I whispered. Aren't I supposed to help them? There's a profound difference between helping family during genuine need and being exploited, she said gently. Healthy family relationships involve mutual respect and appropriate boundaries. What they're doing isn't love, Violet, it's financial abuse. That term financial abuse hit me like a physical blow. I had never considered that what was happening could be classified as abuse. It seemed too extreme a label for parents who had, after all, raised me and provided for my basic needs growing up. But as Dr. Lawson walked me through the patterns of behavior, I couldn't deny the truth of it. December arrived with no contact from my parents, though I hadn't really expected any. In the past, when I'd resisted their financial demands, they had used the silent treatment until I gave in. This time felt different, more final somehow. I had crossed a line by standing my ground at Thanksgiving, and the silence stretched on as Christmas approached. I checked my phone obsessively the first week, both dreading and hoping for a message. By the second week, I had stopped expecting one. Instead, I received a series of texts from Mom that weren't apologies, but rather continued demands. The cruise company needs payment by December 20th, or we lose our deposit. Your father and I are very disappointed in your attitude. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us. Each message twisted the knife deeper, but I resisted the urge to respond. After the third day of these texts, I made the difficult decision to block both their numbers. The relief I felt afterward was immediate and surprising. For the first time in years, I wouldn't be waking up to guilt-inducing messages or unexpected financial emergencies. As Christmas approached, Amara invited me to join her family's celebration. No one should be alone during the holidays, she insisted. My parents already said they'd love to have you. Christmas with Amara's family was a revelation. Her parents were warm and welcoming, genuinely interested in my work and my well-being without any hidden agenda. They gave thoughtful but modest gifts. They shared family traditions that focused on togetherness rather than material excess. I observed with fascination how a healthy family operated the give and take of genuine affection without manipulation or exploitation. "You're welcome here anytime, Violet," Amara's mother said as she hugged me goodbye. Family isn't just about blood. That concept chosen family became my lifeline in the weeks that followed. I threw myself into building stronger connections with friends who genuinely cared about me. I focused on excelling at work, earning a spot on an innovative project that could lead to another promotion. I started volunteering at a coding workshop for underprivileged girls, finding purpose in helping others develop skills for financial independence. In mid-December, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Sophia, my mother's sister, whom I hadn't seen in years. She had heard about the Thanksgiving incident through family gossip. "I'm not surprised," she said with a sigh. "Diana has always been this way, even when we were growing up. Nothing was ever enough." I distanced myself years ago for my own sanity. Our conversation gave me valuable perspective on the generational patterns at play. My mother's materialism hadn't developed in a vacuum. Aunt Sophia described their own parents' emphasis on status and appearance, and how differently she and my mother had responded to that upbringing. "You can break the cycle, Violet," she assured me. "It's painful, but sometimes distance is the only way to heal." My next therapy session with Dr. Lawson was transformative. We discussed the concept of differentiation, the process of defining yourself as separate from your family of origin, while still maintaining connection. "The pain you're feeling is real and valid," she acknowledged. "But it's also a necessary part of becoming your authentic self. You are not responsible for funding your parents' lifestyle or solving your brother's gambling problems. Your responsibility is to build a healthy, fulfilling life for yourself." For the first time, I began to envision a future where my relationship with money wasn't tainted by guilt and obligation. I created a realistic budget that prioritized my needs and goals, building an emergency fund, saving for retirement, and even setting aside money for a down payment on a condo. I allowed myself small luxuries without self-reproach, recognizing that I deserved to enjoy the fruits of my labor. The holidays passed, and as January began, I felt stronger and more centered than I had in years. I was still sad about the rift with my family, but I no longer questioned whether I had been right to set boundaries. The silence from my parents had become less painful and more peaceful with each passing day. I had no idea that the silence was about to be shattered by an unexpected crisis. On a frigid evening in late December, nearly 4 weeks after the Thanksgiving disaster, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, suspecting it might be my parents calling from a different phone to circumvent my block. Something compelled me to pick up anyway. "Violet, it's Jackson. Please don't hang up." My brother's voice sounded strange, tight with panic, and something else I couldn't identify. "Jackson, why are you calling from this number? What's going on?" I really messed up, Vi. I mean, really, really bad this time. His words tumbled out in a rush. I owe some guys $25,000 and they're not the kind of people you want to owe money to. I sank onto my couch, a familiar weight settling in my stomach. Another gambling debt. Have you asked Mom and Dad? They said they can't help. They're tapped out from putting deposits on that cruise and some other stuff. They told me to call you. Of course they did. Despite their anger, they still saw me as the solution to family financial problems. I can't just give you $25,000, Jackson, I said firmly, remembering my therapy sessions and newly established boundaries. You don't understand. His voice cracked with desperation. These guys showed up at my apartment last night. They said they know where Mom and Dad live too. They're serious, Violet. I'm scared. A chill ran through me. Have you gone to the police? Are you kidding? These aren't the kind of guys you involve the police with. Please, Vi. I'm begging you. I know I've been a jerk, but I don't know what else to do. I could hear the genuine terror in his voice, but I also recognized the manipulation tactic, intentional or not. This was exactly how our parents had trained us to interact with each other. I need time to think, Jackson. And we need to talk in person, not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? We arranged to meet at a cafe near my office the following afternoon. I spent a restless night considering my options. My instinct was still to rescue my brother, to solve the problem with money, as I always had. But Dr. Lawson's voice echoed in my head. Enabling destructive behavior isn't helping, it's harming. When Jackson walked into the cafe the next day, I barely recognized him. My once handsome, confident brother looked haggard and thin. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he kept glancing nervously around the cafe, as if expecting trouble to follow him. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the water I'd ordered for him. "Tell me everything," I said. "The whole truth, Jackson. No minimizing, no vague details. I need to know exactly what's happening." For the next hour, Jackson unraveled the extent of his gambling addiction. What had started as casual sports betting in college had evolved into an all-consuming obsession with online poker and casino games. He'd maxed out multiple credit cards, taken payday loans at exorbitant interest rates, and borrowed money from friends he could no longer face. "I kept thinking I could win it all back with one good night," he explained, staring into his untouched coffee. "That's how it always goes. You chase the losses until you're in so deep you can't see daylight anymore." The $25,000 he currently owed was to a loan shark connected to an underground gambling network. They'd given him 1 month to pay, and 3 weeks had already passed. "And Mom and Dad really won't help?" I asked, still finding it hard to believe they'd refuse him when they'd always favored him growing up. Jackson's laugh was bitter. "They can't help. They're broke, Vi. All those emergencies over the years, most weren't emergencies at all. Dad's been gambling too, not as bad as me, but enough to cause problems. And Mom's spending is completely out of control. Designer everything memberships to places they can't afford to impress people they don't even like." The pieces clicked into place. My parents' escalating financial demands weren't just about entitlement or materialism. They were desperate to maintain a facade while their financial situation crumbled beneath the surface. "They've been living beyond their means for years," Jackson continued, "using credit cards, taking out home equity loans, and of course relying on you. When you cut them off at Thanksgiving, you pulled their last safety net." I sat back processing this revelation. So the Caribbean cruise, completely aspirational. They wanted it, convinced themselves they deserved it, and assumed you'd pay for it like everything else. When you refused it, shattered their whole financial house of cards. "I'm not giving you $25,000, Jackson," I said, after a long pause. His face crumpled. "Violet, please. They'll hurt me. They might hurt Mom and Dad too." "I didn't say I wouldn't help you," I clarified. "I'm just not giving you cash that will disappear without solving the actual problem." I outlined my alternative. I would connect him with a gambling addiction counselor who specialized in financial crises. I would consider helping negotiate with his creditors if he committed to treatment. And I would help him develop a realistic plan to rebuild his life and eventually repay his debts. "This isn't just about money," I explained. "It's about breaking the cycle. You need help, real help, not just a bailout." At first, Jackson reacted with anger, accusing me of being heartless and putting his life at risk. But as his initial fury subsided, something unexpected happened. He broke down completely. "I'm so tired, Vi," he sobbed, shoulders shaking. "I'm tired of the lies, the constant anxiety, the shame. I don't want to live like this anymore." In that moment, I saw my brother clearly for perhaps the first time. Not as the golden child who got everything while I worked for scraps, but as another victim of our family's dysfunctional relationship with money status and emotional manipulation. "We can't control how Mom and Dad behave," I told him, reaching across the table to grasp his trembling hand. "But we can choose a different path for ourselves." By the end of our meeting, Jackson had agreed to call the counselor I recommended and attend his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting that evening. We wouldn't involve our parents yet, allowing Jackson to begin his recovery journey without their potentially sabotaging influence. As we parted outside the cafe, Jackson hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry for everything, Vi, for never standing up for you, for taking advantage. You're a good sister, better than I deserve." "We're both products of the same broken system," I replied. "But we don't have to stay broken." I walked away feeling lighter somehow, despite the complexity of the situation ahead. For the first time, I felt like I was helping my brother in a way that might actually make a difference, rather than just enabling destructive patterns. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly our parents would insert themselves back into the situation, or how differently I would respond to their demands this time. 3 days after my meeting with Jackson, an insistent knocking at my apartment door jolted me awake early on a Sunday morning. I peered through the peephole, then stepped back in shock. My parents stood in the hallway looking impatient and determined. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but they had clearly seen my car in the building's parking lot, and the confrontation would only be delayed, not avoided. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Finally," Mom huffed, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. Dad followed with a terse nod, his expression unreadable. They looked different somehow. Mom's usually perfect hair appeared hastily styled, and Dad's confident posture had given way to a slight stoop. The strain of recent weeks showed on their faces. "We need to talk about Jackson," Dad said without preamble, settling himself on my couch, as if the Thanksgiving conflict had never happened. "Hello to you, too," I said, crossing my arms. "It's been over a month since you kicked me out on Thanksgiving. No call, no apology, and now you're in my living room at 7:30 on a Sunday morning." Mom waved away my words as if swatting an annoying insect. "This is more important than holiday disagreements, Violet. Your brother is in serious trouble." "I know," I replied. "He told me about the gambling debt." They exchanged surprised glances. "You've spoken to him when?" Dad demanded. "A few days ago. He explained everything, including the fact that you sent him to me for money." Mom had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but quickly recovered. "Well, then you understand how serious this is. These aren't nice people he owes money to. The whole family could be in danger." "So what are you proposing?" I asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear them say it. "We need you to help pay off his debt," Dad stated. $25,000. Once it's paid, we can figure out how to handle his gambling problem." The old Violet would have been calculating how to access the funds, perhaps draining her savings, or taking out a loan, putting her brother's immediate crisis ahead of her own financial security. But I wasn't that person anymore. "No," I said simply. The silence that followed was absolute. Mom's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish out of water. Dad's face darkened ominously. "What do you mean, no?" Mom finally managed. "This is your brother we're talking about. If you loved him, you wouldn't hesitate." There it was, the emotional manipulation I had come to recognize so clearly. Love equals money in their equation. "I do love Jackson," I replied calmly. "That's why I've connected him with a gambling addiction counselor and resources to address the real problem, not just the symptom." "Counseling won't keep these thugs from breaking his legs," Dad shouted, rising to his feet. "This is an emergency, Violet." "I understand it's an emergency," I acknowledged. "But giving Jackson money without addressing his addiction would be like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound." He needs real help. Mom's eyes filled with tears right on cue. I cannot believe how cold you've become. We raised you better than this. Family takes care of family. Yes, they do. I agreed. But taking care means doing what's best for someone's well-being, not what's easiest or most comfortable. Jackson needs treatment, not a bailout that will enable his next gambling spree. So you'll just abandon him, abandon us. Dad's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. After everything we've done for you, I took a deep breath, centering myself before responding. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm offering real help instead of a quick fix. And as for what you've done for me, yes, you raised me. That was your choice and your responsibility as parents. It doesn't entitle you to control my finances for the rest of my life. Mom stood now too trembling with emotion. How dare you speak to us this way? We gave you everything. No, you didn't. I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You gave me the basics, and I'm grateful for that. But you also taught me that my value was tied to what I could provide for you materially. You favored Jackson when it was convenient, then sent him to me when he needed more than you could give. That's not healthy, and I won't participate in it anymore. So that's it, Dad challenged. You're just cutting us off, turning your back on your family. I'm setting boundaries, I corrected him. If you want to have a relationship with me, it needs to be based on mutual respect and genuine care, not financial exploitation. I'm happy to help Jackson get treatment. I'm willing to discuss rebuilding our relationship through family counseling, but I will not be your personal bank anymore. Mom collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing dramatically. I don't even recognize you anymore. What happened to our sweet, helpful daughter? She grew up, I replied simply. She realized her worth isn't measured by how much money she gives away or how much mistreatment she tolerates. Dad stood silent for a long moment, his expression shifting subtly. For the first time, I caught a glimpse of something unexpected in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even a flicker of recognition. You really mean it, don't you? He asked quietly. You're not going to change your mind. I really mean it, I confirmed. This is where I stand. What followed was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with my parents. For nearly an hour, I laid out exactly how their behavior had affected me over the years, from the differential treatment between Jackson and me growing up, to the escalating financial demands as my career progressed. I explained how their conditional love had damaged my self-worth and created an unhealthy relationship with money. They didn't receive it all well. Mom continued to cry and make accusations of selfishness and abandonment. Dad fluctuated between anger and defensive justification. But they listened, really listened perhaps for the first time. Here's what I can offer, I concluded. I will help connect you with financial counseling to address your spending and debt issues. I will continue supporting Jackson's recovery if he commits to treatment. And I'm open to working on our relationship if you're willing to respect my boundaries. But the blank checks and emotional manipulation end today. After they left without any firm resolution, but with my terms clearly established, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my deepest fear, their rejection and anger, and survived. I had spoken my truth without wavering. The outcome remained uncertain. They might choose to cut me off completely rather than accept a relationship without financial benefits. Jackson might relapse despite the resources I offered. But for the first time, I felt like I was living authentically, on my own terms, rather than theirs. A week later, I learned through Aunt Sophia that my parents had sold some of their luxury items and taken out a loan against Dad's retirement account to help address Jackson's debt. It was the first time they had made a significant sacrifice for him, instead of expecting me to handle it. Perhaps my boundaries had forced a small but meaningful change. Whether our relationship would heal or dissolve remained to be seen, but I was finally ready to accept either outcome, with the knowledge that I had done what was right for everyone involved, including myself. 1 month after the confrontation with my parents, my life had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. My apartment, once simply a place to sleep between work and family obligations, became a true sanctuary. I repainted the walls in soothing blues and greens, invested in comfortable furniture that reflected my personal style, and created a dedicated space for my coding projects. For the first time, I was building a home that nourished my spirit rather than just housed my belongings. The constant anxiety about unexpected financial demands had faded, replaced by a growing sense of peace and self-determination. I checked my phone without dread, no longer fearing the sight of my parents' names on the screen. My sleep improved, and colleagues commented on my increased confidence and creative contributions at work. Jackson had surprised me with his commitment to recovery. He was attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly, working with both an addiction counselor and a financial advisor, and had moved into a sober living house specifically for people with gambling problems. We spoke regularly, and I saw glimpses of the person he might have become without our parents enabling and the pressure of being the golden child. The counselor says I used gambling to feel something. He told me during one of our coffee meetups, to feel alive, to matter. Winning was like validation that I was worth something. I understood that feeling all too well, though my own version had manifested differently through overwork and overgiving to earn approval and love. "How are mom and dad handling everything?" I asked, still maintaining my distance from them while supporting Jackson's recovery. He shrugged, stirring his coffee absently. "They sold some stuff to help with my debt. Dad's Rolex, mom's designer bag's the boat they barely used. They're not happy about it, but they're managing. Dad's actually going to some financial counseling thing at their bank." The news was encouraging if surprising. Perhaps facing real consequences for their financial choices was the only way they could begin to change. My parents themselves had made tentative, awkward attempts at contact, a text message from mom asking how I was doing, a brief, uncomfortable phone call from dad about a family health insurance question. No apologies yet, but no demands either. I responded politely, but maintained my boundaries, making it clear that our relationship would need to evolve substantially before I would consider a closer connection. On those rare occasions when I allowed myself to check their social media, I noticed subtle changes. Fewer posts about luxury purchases or expensive outings. No more complaints about ungrateful children or cryptic statements designed to make me feel guilty. It wasn't transformation exactly, but perhaps the beginning of awareness. My own relationship with money had evolved dramatically. Working with a financial advisor, I created a comprehensive plan that prioritized my security and goals while still allowing for generosity on my own terms. I automated substantial contributions to my retirement accounts and emergency fund. I researched first-time homebuyer programs and began saving for a down payment on a small condo. Most significantly, I established a personal giving fund, allocating a specific percentage of my income to causes I believed in and people I wanted to help, including a modest monthly contribution to Jackson's recovery housing costs. This structured approach to generosity allowed me to express my natural giving nature without sacrificing my financial health or enabling destructive behavior. Dr. Lawson helped me recognize that my worth wasn't tied to how much I sacrificed for others. Generosity should come from abundance, not obligation, she reminded me, and it should lift both parties up, not create dependency or resentment. I built stronger connections with my chosen family, spending holidays and weekends with friends who valued me for myself, not what I could provide materially. I reconnected with extended family members like Aunt Sophia, who understood the dysfunction and had established their own healthy boundaries years before. As winter gave way to early spring, I reflected on the painful journey of the past months. The Thanksgiving confrontation that had seemed so devastating had actually been the catalyst for profound positive change in my life. By forcing me to stand firm in my worth and values, it had freed me from patterns that had limited me for years. I still grieve for the family relationships I wished I had. The unconditional love and support that seemed so natural in other families remained elusive in mine. But I had stopped waiting for my parents to become different people, or to suddenly recognize and validate my worth. Instead, I gave myself the recognition and validation I had always sought from them. The most important lesson I learned through this ordeal was that true family, whether related by blood or by choice, support your growth and well-being without keeping a ledger of debts and obligations. Love doesn't come with invoices attached. Care doesn't demand payment. And establishing boundaries, however painful, initially creates the possibility for healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. As I planned my own small Thanksgiving gathering for the coming year, inviting friends and chosen family who genuinely celebrated my success and supported my journey, I felt gratitude for the crisis that had ultimately led to my liberation. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed opens the door to discovering what you truly deserve. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who treated you like a walking wallet instead of a person with feelings? I'd love to hear how you handled it in the comments. Did my story resonate with your own experiences? Sometimes sharing our stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your worth and creating healthy relationships. Remember, you deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey to setting healthy boundaries.